This episode of Experiences You Should Have is brought to you by Soul Blends, handcrafted in Oregon from botanicals to bottle, multiple healing balms, salves, and moisturizing products to bring life to your skin. Check out Soul Blends and use the code EYSH to receive 10% off your order.
And on one side of the river are these huge rock towers, hundreds of feet tall, kind of orange and gold and kind of yellowish and reddish in color, just kind of sticking out of this otherwise really flat landscape. And it's really stunning.
Welcome to Experiences You Should Have, your how-to guide for amazing experiences. I'm your host, Gail Manasco, and today we are delving into an experience in my own backyard. Many times people will come to Bend, Oregon, and I will tell them, you have to go see Smith Rock. Now, Smith Rock is a world-renowned rock climbing destination, but it is also a fantastic place for a hike, a picnic at the sunset, or just a place to go and see expansive views as it overtakes your soul. This place is seriously stunning. However, it really is known for its rock climbing, and I'm not a rock climber. I'm one of the people that go and I hike and I look at the rock climbers and I get nearby ice cream or a beer. However, after talking to Cliff Agos, I am inspired to try rock climbing at Smith Rock, and I hope you are inspired as well. Now, at the age of 11, Cliff Agos began winter camping in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, which laid the foundation for every adventure in the mountains since. His education in technical climbing began 11 years later in California, where he became a student of Yosemite. He began guiding in 2008 and moved to the Pacific Northwest soon after. He has since guided in Oregon, Washington, California, Wyoming, Montana, Argentina, Mexico, and Ecuador. His personal climbing pursuits have taken him to Patagonia, Nepal, East Africa, and all across the United States. So he is a co-owner of Timberline Mountain Guides, Smith Rock Climbing School, and Oregon Ski Guides. And you can hire Cliff to take you rock climbing at Smith Rock. How convenient. And Cliff is a wealth of knowledge. He just has a way of bringing excitement about rock climbing, as well as his incredible expertise in the sport. So I'm personally ready to hire Cliff to take me there. This is who I want to go with, and I wanted to only bring the best to you listeners. So let's welcome Cliff to Experiences You Should Have, and let's go on a rock climbing adventure at Smith Rock in Central Oregon for a journey you won't forget. Welcome, Cliff, to the show. It's so exciting to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. It's so amazing. Smith Rock is in my backyard, and I don't go to it as near enough as I should. But can you describe what Smith Rock looks like and where it is for our listeners?
Yeah, Smith Rock is it's a really kind of stunning place. It's out in the middle of Oregon, out in rural farm and ranch land. And it's a few hours from the airport in Portland, although it's just a few minutes from the much smaller Redmond airport. But when you drive there, you start to see it as you're coming across the highway through kind of the plains. You start to see out in the distance this kind of these spiky towers sticking up out of the desert.
Mm-hmm.
And as you get closer and pull into town and into the park itself, you realize that it's actually this deep canyon with a river running through it. And on one side of the river are these huge rock towers, hundreds of feet tall, kind of orange and gold and kind of yellowish and reddish in color, just kind of sticking out of this otherwise really flat landscape. And it's really stunning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I remember the first time that I went to Smith Rock, I was mesmerized just seeing this river through this canyon. And then as I would change my perception there, I would see these snow covered peaks, uh, just these mountains just sneak up on you in between the rock, and then seeing the rock climbers and the mountains and the river and the color, it just blew me away.
Yeah, it's a place where it's really easy to take a stunning photo. Like you said, just all of that beauty surrounding you, and then in the background, these snow-capped peaks really kind of top it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd love to hear about one of your favorite experiences of rock climbing at Smith Rock.
I think one of the best experiences rock climbing at Smith is climbing the Monkey Face. Um, it's this huge tower of rock that's basically a freestanding pinnacle with a big knob kind of on the top. So getting to the summit requires, no matter how you go, climbing some really steep overhanging terrain that's it's quite difficult. So there's no way to hike to the top. So getting up there and standing on the summit is a really special experience. It usually requires even the fastest teams a few hours of climbing typically. And it's a lot of hard work. But when you get up there, it's just really a special and unique place to be. And then it's kind of all topped off by this giant free hanging rappel back down to the ground. So it's a pretty unique kind of adventurous day that's it's it's doable for people, but it takes some experience and and some background to get through that challenge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, did you climb Smith Rock on your first, or did you climb Monkey Face on your first time to Smith Rock?
I did actually. For me, it was a pretty cool experience. A friend of mine and I had this was my early days of rock climbing. When I first got into it, I think it was my second year, and a friend and I had decided to quit our jobs at the same time and take a big road trip. And Smith Rock was one of the spots on a rock climbing road trip because it's so important historically in the history of climbing in the US. And we came here with about 9 days of climbing planned. And one of the things we wanted to do is advance our skill set by learning a bit about aid climbing.
Mm-hmm.
And aid climbing is different from what most people think of as rock climbing because it involves actually clipping attachments to the rock and then pulling up on them. And usually it involves taking a nylon ladder and clipping it to an anchor that's attached to the rock and actually standing in that ladder to make upward progress. So it's
Mm-hmm.
used for things where the terrain is so steep or so blank that just holding on to rock features with your hands and feet wouldn't really work for most people. So we wanted to learn that skill set, and the monkey is one of the best places anywhere that I can think of to learn and practice that skill set for the first time. And so it's kind of known for that. And my friend and I were excited to come out and challenge ourselves and see if we could get to the top of this thing. And it was quite a formative experience for me in my climbing. It's really special that now as a guide, I get to share that experience with other people.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Now, what really put Smith Rock on the map?
Uh, Back in the 80s, there wasn't much going on at Smith Rock. There were just a few folks that were coming out here and climbing the crack systems. And back then, the way to rock climb was to start at the bottom and head up a crack or other broken feature on a rock face and put in rock protection as you go up. Little pieces of metal on wire that you can fit into the crack so that when you clip the rope through, if you were to fall, they would stay jammed in the rock and keep you from falling too far.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the climbers at Smith Rock, after they had climbed most of the crack systems, looked around at all the other big faces of rock that were just absolutely clean, no cracks or breaks on them for hundreds of feet, both wide and tall. And they realized as they got closer to that rock, that it was absolutely covered in little features, knobs and edges and little pockets that they could put their feet and their hands in.
Mm-hmm.
And they realized that if they were to outfit some of those what appeared to be smooth rock faces that were actually covered in these little features, if they could outfit those with bolts to clip their carabiners to and clip the ropes to, that they could ascend these huge faces of rock that would be unattainable if they just started climbing from the ground and trying to put in protection. There wasn't any cracks for that sort of thing, and it takes a little more effort to put in a bolt.
Mm-hmm.
And so they started hiking to the top of the cliff and actually rappelling down the face and putting in bolts, and then coming back again from the bottom and climbing up the roots. And that was a pretty revolutionary thing to do in climbing in the United States at that time. Nowhere else was anyone doing that. And it really changed the way climbers looked at rock climbs. All of a sudden, they didn't just have to look at crack systems. They could look at any big face of rock and imagine putting bolts on it and imagine what the climbing would be like.
Wow. Wow. Now, when you first came to Smith Rock, you were on a road trip, you were visiting, but you now live in Bend, Oregon. So is the rock climbing that good that it brought you to move here?
Yes. When I first came, it was probably 2005. And as soon as I left, I knew it was a place that I wanted to come back to again and again. There's a combination of the quality of the rock climbing and the sheer amount of it. Smith Rock is actually a relatively small area. It's only about a square mile, but it has a huge amount of vertical surface area that's climbable. And there are literally thousands of rock climbing routes that are established here, meaning that there's bolts to protect climbers, lead climbers going up, and anchors bolted at the top typically so that you can get down from these climbs. And there's actually an organization that called the High Desert Climbers Alliance that goes around and replaces bolts as they get worn out so that they maintain these routes as safe for future climbers. So all of that kind of combines to make Smith a really compelling area for rock climbers. And for myself, I wanted to live in a place close to somewhere where I would have a lifetime supply of climbing that I could pursue, so that I didn't only have to enjoy climbing when I had the opportunity to take a trip somewhere, or if I had enough time over a weekend to drive a long distance. I wanted to have somewhere where I could climb on a daily basis and really sink my teeth into, but not something that was so small that I'd go through everything quickly and have to repeat stuff all the time or get bored.
And so you've been here. How many years have you lived here now?
I've been living in Bend, Oregon for, I think, around 11 or 12 years now.
So do you find yourself getting bored at all with Smith Rock, or is it still challenging you today?
Oh, it's still challenging. There are climbs at a difficulty which I'll probably never even achieve, but there's countless climbs that are at my ability or at ability level higher that I still seek to get to. and even stuff that's, not necessarily that hard for me, but just that, has the potential to be really fun and places I want to explore and check out. There's areas where there aren't rock climbs established where, folks like me can go out and establish their own, rock climbs and things like that. So it's
Hmm.
kind of never ending fun out there. And that's not even to mention all the other fun things to do in Central Oregon, of course.
Right, right. Yes, this is like the adventure land. It's pretty cool for you listeners out there. Come out to Bend, Oregon. Well, let's get into some logistics here. When is the best time of year to rock climb at Smith Rock?
Well, for the most part, it's hard to go wrong. I mean, one of the things that definitely attracts me to the area is that you can climb here year round. The
Mhm.
difference, of course, is that in the winter, the times that it's climbable are short. It's just when the sun's shining, and it's usually for just a few hours in the middle of the day. And of course, in the heat of summer, we kind of shoot for the cooler hours of the day, early morning, and stay in the shade and things like that. But I'd say hands down, the best time to climb at Smith Rock is in the fall. That's the time when the locals and folks who, climb really hard and difficult rock climbs, probably save to do their hardest climbs of the year. For one thing, they've had the whole year to kind of build up and train and get ready. But in the fall, the heat of summer kind of dies down. The air is still really dry, but it's cooled off quite a bit, and that leads to really good friction. It means that your hands aren't going to be as sweaty, and so you'll be able to hold on to smaller holds better and things like that. And so, um, I'd say September and October are really the best time to be rock climbing at
Mm.
Smith Rock.
Great. Absolutely great. I just love fall here, especially if we're not having a crazy fire season. Then I really like fall here.
Yeah, yeah. And, usually even at least in October, we'll start to get some of those mountain snow or mountain rainstorms that at least will kind of tamp down if we do have some fires going. And the summer crowds kind of head out usually as kids get back to school and things like that. So it's
Right.
usually a little bit quieter outside in the park as well, which is kind of nice.
Yeah. Now, what about beginner climbers, people who've never climbed before? Could they have a fun day at Smith Rock?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's tons of climbing there at every difficulty. So there are absolutely beginner rock climbs, areas that are even accessible for young kids, where folks can kind of get out there and experience what it's like to climb without having to be super athletes. So, getting out there with somebody knowledgeable who knows how to use the rope systems is really important. But beginners can definitely get out there and have a lot of fun if they have that kind of guidance.
Hmm. So, for someone who needs to find someone knowledgeable, how would they go about finding a guide?
Well, there's a variety of options out there. There are a number of guide services, including mine, Smith Rock Climbing School, that operate in the park, and some with different specialties. So, I think, folks are pretty well versed in going out there and searching Google and reading reviews and such. But I would recommend that folks look for guides who are qualified through certification. So, guide services go through an accreditation process with the American Mountain Guide Association. And I would consider looking for that or trying to seek out a guide who's certified through the American Mountain Guide Association to ensure that, you're getting someone qualified. But yeah, there are a lot of options out there to dig into.
Yeah. So, what type of skills do you need to start rock climbing?
Well, there's kind of two sides to a rock climbing skill set. One is movement and, learning kind of the basics of how, you know, the human body in general and your body in particular kind of, works with the rock. So there are some fundamental movement skills that folks will want to learn to move efficiently and to be able to have the most fun out there. And in the outdoors, there's also the importance of the technical systems, and some of this applies even to gym climbing as well. Folks have to know how to use a harness and a belay system to, share a climbing partnership and belay each other while the other partner gets to go climbing safely without having to worry about falling.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are kind of the fundamentals. When we go outside, then we have to know a little bit about how to construct anchors and how to check and make sure that our anchors are constructed correctly so that, when we go and do the climbing and belaying, that we know it's going to work properly. So those are kind of the fundamental skills. And then a lot of climbers will keep taking steps beyond that and start to think about trying multi-pitch climbing or trying traditional climbing where they're actually going to go up those crack systems and place gear as they climb and that sort of thing. So there are kind of a lot of places that folks can take it, but those fundamental skills of how to build anchors and how to belay with ropes is really a requirement for climbing outside.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they can learn that through like a rock climbing school, correct?
Correct. There's options to learn that kind of stuff both in gyms and outside in a particular rock climbing area. And, gyms are really well geared towards teaching fundamental skills. Going outside and hiring a guide is really good to get a really um, qualified and well-rounded understanding of how basic rock climbing systems apply to the real world and how you can adjust them
Yeah.
um, for the real world.
Cool. Very cool. Now, what about age requirements? How low can you go?
Yeah, I think that kids usually 8 and up probably have the best time rock climbing, although we've definitely taken some special young people down to about 5 or 6 years old who have had a blast out there.
Yeah.
And I think parents know their kids best as far as how rock climbing might suit them. But
Right.
kids, love climbing for the most part. I think any parent knows that if you turn your back long enough, there's a good chance your kid may climb up on something um, while you're kind of distracted and
Yeah.
maybe give you a little bit of a fright. So, it's a pretty natural fit for kids. And I think getting them into a harness and attached to a rope with the right kind of preparation can really be fun for them. And so we do a lot of that kind of stuff. And of course, on the other end of the scale, we've taken many, many folks well into their 60s and 70s rock climbing. And, if they're moving well, they're having a great time with it.
Fantastic. Now, what about people with physical limitations or limited mobility? Maybe if they've got really good arm strength or yeah, is there some programs out there that could help someone with adaptive rock climbing?
Yeah, yeah. There's a really great organization that we've partnered with over the years called the Oregon Adaptive Sports. Um, for years, they've been working with disabled athletes of all types on Mount Bachelor and doing adaptive skiing.
Mhm.
And in the past 5 years or so, they've opened up some rock climbing programs as well and been able to do a bunch of community rock climbing programs, both in the local climbing gym as well as outside, partnered with us, helping them put up anchors and such. And so there are a lot of different ways, depending on folks' limitations, that they can do some adaptive climbing. And there are a lot of different specialized tools for that. It has actually become, quite a popular thing in recent years, and it's been something that there's definitely been an industry developing around getting those tools out there to folks that they can enjoy, vertical rock climbing, even if they have, some mobility limitations. So, um, folks can definitely reach out to that organization as well as, there are a lot of opportunities for folks to go out even without, any sort of special assistance and just, pick climbs that are suitable to to their body. We have everything at Smith from overhung climbs with really positive handholds to low angle climbs where your hands are really just for balance and you're doing most of the work on with your legs and with your footwork. So there's quite a range for people, and I think one of the really cool things about rock climbing in general is that it's something that everybody can do on some level and really experience that challenge and have fun pushing through.
Hmm. Now, I do know that getting down into Smith Rock is, I mean, it's a little bit of a hill, like coming from like the main parking lot. So what if you're coming in on a wheelchair? Is there an accessible path to get there?
There is a wheelchair accessible climbing area at Smith with kind of a wheelchair accessible road. It is a gravel road. So, if you have kind of an option of a chair with kind of wider, burlier tires or
Hmm.
tires with grip, that's really helpful. We've had some disabled athletes come down there on hand bikes, like kind of mountain bike style hand bikes that's worked really well. But with a little bit of support, even a regular wheelchair can actually get down to one of our areas called the rope de dope block.
Yeah.
And actually, a few years ago at our volunteer kind of spring park cleanup, park improvement event, which is called the Spring Thing, OAS gathered up a big team, and a bunch of us actually did a bunch of work down at the rope de dope block, moving fencing around, pulling some big boulders out of the ground and moving them out of the way to make that area much more easily accessible for wheelchairs, folks on wheels, folks with crutches, and things like that. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, some areas are really hard to get to in the park, but there are some options that are pretty accessible. So it's really cool.
Sweet. That is absolutely wonderful to hear. Thank you. And so, if people are coming out to Bend for a vacation, maybe they want to go rock climbing for a day, maybe a family activity or a group of friends, or rock climb for a few days. They hire a guide. How much does that cost?
Well, it can definitely vary, but I'd say, it depends on the size of the group, primarily for my company at least.
Mm-hmm.
And the day could run probably anywhere from about $380 to about $515 for a larger group of folks.
All right. And that's including gear, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. We can include in that shoes, harness, helmets, and of course all the ropes and stuff. So folks can feel free to just kind of show up with, food and water and layers for the day, and we're gonna kind of take everything from there.
Yeah. So when going to Smith Rock, you mentioned the food, water, layers, but what else should you bring with you?
Well, those are really some of the key things. Folks do want to keep in mind that they're going into a desert environment and that there are areas of Smith Rock, even though it's only a square mile, where you have to walk around this really large formation. And so you can get fairly far away from, facilities. And, you need to be somewhat self sufficient back there. So, um, things like sunscreen and sunglasses are really, really important. Plenty of water, more than you think, especially in the desert environment, is key. And you may not realize how much you're sweating because of that dry air. And a bunch of different layers, for all the conditions, because from sun to shade or from morning to afternoon, the temperature can swing quite a bit. And so you want to be prepared for all that stuff, and also for any weather that's in the forecast. We can have storms, thunderstorms, hail showers out there occasionally, especially in the spring and early summer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, let's say you've had a long day, beautiful day of rock climbing at Smith Rock, and you are starving. You don't want your own food. Where are you going for food and drink?
That's an easy answer. That's the Terrebonne Depot.
Uh-huh.
And that's an awesome restaurant. It's actually the old train station in the town of Terrebonne. and it's really close to the park. It's probably the first thing you'll pass on the way into town as far as anything commercial goes. And as you're leaving the park, you just take a couple of turns, and as you cruise into town, it's up there on the left side as you cross the train tracks. That's been a long time establishment. It's changed hands a few times, but one thing that's definitely not changed about it is that the food is really, really good, and the drinks are really, really good. Of course, it's they serve Oregon beer, so that's an easy one.
Right.
But yeah, they have great food, and it's definitely something that is worth standing in line for a little bit to get out on the deck for a classic kind of Central Oregon summer evening where you hang out there and get a good meal and have a few drinks after a nice day at the park.
Yeah, perfect. Absolutely perfect. I love going out there around sunset. It's just one of my favorite views in Central Oregon.
It is really beautiful. Yeah, from the Terrebonne Depot, you're looking at kind of the west side of Smith Rock and really beautiful view of the Monkey Face. And then off to your west is all of the Oregon Cascades. And at sunset, the sky in summer tends to turn this really beautiful shade of orange. And you know the snow covered peaks in front of it just take on this bluish hue, and it makes for these really surreal evening sunsets that seem to just go on forever.
Perfect. I am ready for one of those evenings where
They're coming soon.
I know I can't wait. I absolutely cannot wait. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add about rock climbing at Smith Rock?
Well, one more thing now is that one piece of gear that everybody's bringing to the park now is a face mask, and hopefully
Mm-hmm.
that won't be on the gear list for too much longer. But because Smith Rock is so popular and so many folks are sharing the same trails there, it is required to wear a mask in the popular areas. And for the most part, once we get off into the climbing zones, we can keep far enough apart from other groups and even from our own groups if they're not folks we live with to take the masks off and just breathe and
Yeah.
enjoy rock climbing, which sometimes gets us breathing kind of heavy.
Right. Yes, we are still in COVID. And actually, question on COVID. Is there camping in the park if people want to stay the night there?
I think right now the camping is still closed because they've been doing some kind of reconstruction on their camping area.
Mm-hmm.
But there is camping nearby. There's a popular spot called the Skull Hollow Campground, which is on BLM land.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some good kind of pay sites there and a pit toilet, and they got fire pits and tables and such. And nearby to there is also dispersed camping available on the BLM land if you want to kind of go more the free camping route. So there
Mm-hmm.
are some good options out there, and you are kind of out in the country out there, so it feels pretty wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and any recommended rock climbing shops in Terrebonne?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. The rock climbing shop in Terrebonne is called the Red Point,
Uh-huh.
and it's also kind of a Central Oregon institution. It's been there for many years, um, selling guidebooks, selling stick, renting and selling stick clips for folks that want to get that first bolt clip before they leave the ground. And
Yeah.
lately, they've been selling coffee and beer and cider and kombucha, and
Okay.
that's kind of a really classic spot to go after a climbing day as well. There's some outdoor seating. There's some indoor seating that hopefully will be coming back, and it's kind of a gathering spot for climbers at the end of the day there too. So yeah, there's some good options there.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Well, truly, thank you, Cliff, for your time coming on the show, sharing your knowledge, and hopefully our listeners will book a trip to Bend, Oregon, and hire you uh, to take them rock climbing at Smith Rock.
Okay, awesome. Well, if they come here, I'm sure no matter what they do, they can't go wrong.
Yeah. All right. I will make sure to include your information, your websites on the show notes on experiencesyoushouldhave.com. So definitely check out the show notes. Well, thank you, Cliff, and look forward to seeing you around town and hopefully at Smith Rock.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Gail. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much for listening to Experiences You Should Have. Definitely go check out the show notes on this episode on experiencesyoushouldhave.com and click episodes. And please check out Cliff's site at smithrockclimbing.com. You can also check out timberlinemtguides.com as well as oregonskiguides.com. It's the same company, but offers different services and that sort of thing. So check them out and start planning your trip to Bend, Oregon, so you can go rock climbing at the infamous Smith Rock. Please follow us on Instagram, Experiences Podcast. And if you love this show and you're listening on iPhone, please leave a 5-star review on your iPhone on that purple icon, that purple podcast icon. Search for the podcast, leave that 5 stars. Tell us how much you love the show. So much effort goes into this amazing indie adventure podcast. So please share the love. And until our next adventure.